Hey guys, Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got a great show coming up. Thank you for watching. You guys can go to the description for both of them. You can find both of their YouTubes and both of their Twitters. That makes it easier for me to do. But EM having a background in special forces and finance, and John in finding really the big ones being COVID, asteroids, and Vegas shooting is just like I believe we did an episode with Dale about Vegas. Maybe it was just Butler. I don't know if we did. I don't know if you mean Dale
Butler.
did Vegas. Um,
Yes.
I think we only did
Yeah,
Butler,
yeah, yeah.
and
I think the first thing we did was
it
Vegas.
was
The first thing we
okay.
did was,
Okay.
yeah, we did two. We did two.
Well, being again for all future listeners, May 13th, 2025, Trump is probably right now meeting with MBS. I know all the big CEOs are there right now. It does seem kind of timely, and EM having come on here and kind of talking about the high level power politics of the modern, princes or Praetorian Guard. And this is kind of an interesting meshing of EM's take on the 100,000 foot and John's kind of truly, I would say this in the most complimentary way, full blown weaponized autism ability to focus in on shit. And I'm an obsessive compulsive perfectionist who has issues, and I look at John and I go, man, that will find it. If I can, I know he will. So, and I mean that is the biggest compliment ever.
Thank you.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
John, I'm going to hand it away to you and kind of let you guide this.
Well, I know that EM's been talking about the global banking, the families, their interests, and their abilities to kind of pull the strings, sort of despite who's in the White House. It's like it's a bigger game that's being played. And 7 years ago, something took place that I guess, I kind of assembled the evidence, so to speak, to back up an event that's been kept secret for over 7 years, coming up on 8 years, and it's being kept secret right in front of your face today as Donald Trump sits next to MBS in Saudi Arabia and Al-Walid bin Talal walks by.
Mhm.
I mean, you're actually watching this play out in real time, where I have posited that I believe Ali bin Talal was the key person behind the planning and funding
Yeah.
of
Yes.
of the Las Vegas shooting,
Yeah.
and may in fact be the key person behind the September 11th attacks. That is also something that I believe may be true. It's like if you look at the 28 pages at 28pages.org, and you look at what's being redacted and what's not, it appears to me that it was Ali bin Talal who had the most to gain, and I think he was behind the September 11th attacks, maybe with King Abdullah himself. So
One
that's just
does
my thoughts.
wonder if he's an MI6 guy as well.
Well, that's real, you know, boy oh boy. I mean, I've got a whole backstory about MI6 that didn't even hit me until years later.
Mm.
It turns out I was married in one of their top guys' houses
Mm.
and
Mm.
was friends with a top MI6 guy, a guy who ends up getting awarded an OBE, an Order of the British Empire. That's one notch below knight, right?
Yep,
So,
yep.
right?
Yep.
A cameraman for the BBC. Cameraman
Yep.
for the
Yeah.
BBC.
What was that?
OBE.
What was
Okay.
that movie about the actor who was the CIA? What was that movie? I can't remember.
Which
He's a famous actor for
which is the actor?
years. I can't remember who. It was actually a real person, a real act. They did a movie about a real actor, or was it a game show host? Something like that.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah. Wasn't it Chuck Berry? Wasn't it
somebody, yeah,
the guy
somebody,
from
yeah,
the
yeah,
Gong Show? Yeah, the
yeah. I
guy from
think
the
so.
Gong Show.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Chuck
yeah.
Barry. I think it was
That's
Chuck
it.
Barry. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Crazy story. Oh, there's all kinds of crazy stories. In fact, I'm starting now. I'm assuming you and I are give or take. We're a couple years apart, right? We're about the same age. And what I'm starting to think and what I'm starting to realize is the importance of the film industry to Langley.
Oh
Because
yeah.
as I get older, what I'm
Yeah.
realizing is all we have are our memories.
Yeah.
It's all we have. And the shit
So
sitting here on my desk, right? I got the shit sitting here on my desk and my memories. And what Langley must have realized 50, 60 years ago is that the only shared memories that the three of us have, you, me, and
yeah.
Tommy, are the films that we've seen.
Crafted narratives,
So
agreed upon
We can sit
narratives.
here.
let's
We
go
can
back before
exactly. We could
Langley.
sit here.
Yeah, let's go back before
Yeah.
Langley. Meyer Lansky, in order to wash the mob, reputation washed the mob.
Who my grandfather used to work for, by the way. So my
Oh,
mother's
wow.
father used to work for Meyer
Okay,
Lansky. No, and I've
so
never disclosed that before. I've never
interesting.
disclosed that.
So
He actually
now
worked
we've
for
got
Lepke
Meyer
Bookhalter.
Lansky and MI6 connection. Um, Meyer Lansky bankrolled Vegas and Hollywood, sent Bugsy
And
Siegel out
Cuba.
to stand up, right? And
Yeah.
Cuba.
Cuba. Yeah.
And who was the one who was laundering money on Wall Street for Meyer Lansky? Wasn't he a Dulles brother? And wasn't he the guy that helped
Oh,
set up
really?
the CIA, Alan Dulles?
Alan,
Wasn't he
Alan
also
Dulles' brother?
laundering Nazi money?
I wouldn't doubt that at all. I mean,
Right? This is
yeah,
pretty
my
good work on that.
mother's
That's
father worked
in
for Lepke. He worked for Lepke
Lucky.
Bookhalter.
Mm,
Lepke.
yeah,
Lepke. Lepke
yeah,
Bookhalter
yeah.
was sort of the enforcer for Meyer Lansky. And my
Mm,
mother's father, before she was born,
mm,
found out he was working for him at a sales meeting. The sales meeting was at a restaurant, and Lepke Bookhalter sitting at the head of the table. And all the guys at the sales meeting were in black shirts and white ties. And my grandfather told me this story when he was in his 80s and said, he was looking around like he felt like he was in a movie.
yeah.
And when he introduced Lepke Bookhalter, he was kind of shocked. And so this was years ago, before my mother was born, and she's in her 80s.
So MI6, so the precursor to MI6 was using the British film industry for propaganda in the British Empire, all the way back in the silent movies. Meyer Lansky moves into Hollywood in the 20s or 30s.
Bugsy
Um,
Siegel. Yeah.
the CIA needs propaganda capabilities. Well, the best propaganda capabilities were the mob reputation washing with all the mob movies of the 1930s and early 1940s. And they go out there, partner up closely. I mean, look at how many producers have CIA backgrounds, and it's astounding. It's astounding how many
And
CIA
you
people I've
pay
known
people
out loud.
$20 million,
Yeah,
right? You pay somebody $20 million
yeah,
to
yeah,
pretend, right?
yes,
If I knew this stuff when I was 5 years old, I would have just kept playing with Barbies and the girls in the neighborhood and just, keep pretending and pretending. And one day you'll make 25 million a film.
yeah,
Nobody told me that. It's like, why do I have to go to school if I can just pretend? Brad Pitt does nothing but pretend.
yeah,
George
yeah,
Clooney does nothing but pretend. He's got a house on Lake Como. Nobody told me that when I was a kid. They were like, no, you got to go to school and work hard and study and all this stuff. I was like, but I just want to play. I want to pretend I'm a doctor. I don't want to actually be a doctor. It pays better.
I don't have the looks.
And
or
I
the
think
memory
Langley
for Hollywood.
realized
Yeah,
they can place these shared memories, meaning
yeah,
we can
yeah,
talk about Zero Dark 30. We can
yeah,
talk about 13 Hours. And that becomes the shared memory of Benghazi. That
yeah,
becomes the shared
yeah,
memory of the raid on the bin Laden compound,
yeah,
is that which the CIA helped fund. And the
yeah.
story's told the way they want the story told. So the most recent Mission
And
Impossible,
even
or
though now,
Maverick,
years after the story's coming undone because of the CIA narrative or the SOCOM narrative and the guys on the ground narrative is not matching, but it had its
they
effects.
planted the stake. They got ahead of the
Yeah,
story with the
yeah, yeah,
film.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
a perfect example of this, Tommy, is Don't Look Up. I look at the cast, on the Don't Look Up film. So Don't Look Up was produced by Netflix, number one. All right.
mm,
They get what's his name? The actor that was in he's a funny guy. He was in all these funny films. His name escapes me. But they get all these top name people. They get Leonardo DiCaprio. They get Jennifer Lawrence. They get who's the chick that's dating the guy from Saturday Night Live right now?
I don't know.
The famous actress
Yeah, no
I,
idea.
I never saw it, but
dating the Saturday
I
Night
do
Live
know
guy.
it was like it was a star-studded cast.
She was
Yeah.
friends with Harvey Weinstein all the time. She was always sitting with Harvey Weinstein all the award dinners. She's a big famous
Mhm.
actress with Jack Nicholson. She did the movie, and you know who the hell I'm talking about. She was in Don't Look Up. Tommy, look up Don't Look Up on IMDb. Who's the
Yeah.
big actress?
Yes.
They get all these big names. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Jonah Hill is the guy I was thinking of, and
Mhm.
Meryl Streep. These are big names
Yeah,
in Hollywood. Meryl Streep,
Ariana Grande, Kate Blanchett, Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio, Timothy Chalamet, Jonah Hill. Yeah,
well,
it's Melanie Linsky, Kid Cudi, Chris
Jennifer
Evans,
Lawrence, and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Gia Gina
And
Gerson, Sarah Silverman. Yeah,
this is a Netflix movie.
this is just like a list of like the highest paid act.
I mean, the
Chris
only
Evans,
person who's not
Captain
in the movie is
America,
like Brad Cooper, right? Bradley Cooper's the only
Tyler
guy they
Perry.
didn't get. He
Jesus
must have been
Christ, Jared. Wait, what? Are these really all in there?
okay,
Holy
right? So Brad Pitt, and the other guy, they were busy that week.
yeah, but that's
What
it.
the movie portrays a crazy guy telling everybody there's an asteroid coming that's going to wipe us out, and everybody ha 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 ha, and they make fun of the guy, and they plant that bias. They get ahead of the story, and now as I'm talking about Apophis in 2029, everybody's like, "Oh, that's just like Don't Look Up." He's like that idiot on them in the movie. He's just like Don't Look Up.
I have a
7 years
slightly,
ago.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I have a slightly, didn't mean to interrupt. I have a
No, please.
slightly different take on that. I've been writing about it, the Great Deception, looking back at history quite a long ways, um, thousands of years. I've noticed a pattern to where regimes spend a lot of time and energy looking at as many things as they can. And anything that might be really impactful someday, they get ahead of that message by articulating it, communicating it, somehow associating themselves with it so that if that event occurs, they either told you about it or they're behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And very much to what you're articulating, I believe the messaging is more sophisticated. And I think this will get back to, to the Vegas thing, right? Um, because why'd they go about it in that way? Um, I'll give you an example, right? So we've been doing, and this is something I suspect, I've been doing research on it, and um, Great Britain is investing in blotting out the sun.
Right. Right.
Okay. Okay. What did that tell me? What it tells me is global warming's BS. The interglacial period that we've been in for the last, 10,000, 12,000 years is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty high confidence, high enough confidence for them to put something like that out so that when the interglacial period does start to come to end and we do start to see temperatures dropping around the planet, they can say, see, we're doing that. See how powerful we are? See how omniscient we are, how capable we are?
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing that on, asteroids and earthquakes. Like there's the one that came out today that there's some,
Off
subsurface
Oregon.
earthquake or
Yep.
volcano earthquake thing, right? Right. So
Yep.
they're spending and I did PhD studies in computational engineering and science and looked at a lot of things, a lot of data sets and how you assess and analyze. And they're investing, $1 trillion a year to just look at everything and have papers written, and then using all of these methods and mechanisms and everything else to message, right? Sometimes directly, blatantly, sometimes subtly, to the movie you're talking about, which I haven't seen, so forgive me. To me, it would be two messages. If it does happen, well, see, we knew, we told you, right? Why weren't you looking? If it
Right.
doesn't happen, so see, no, we made fun of that. We diminished that. So you're getting
Oh,
both
absolutely.
messages. Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, there's a very powerful cognitive bias called anchoring bias.
Hmm.
And anchoring bias is getting ahead of the story. This is where the whole term comes from, is we've got to get ahead of the story.
Yeah.
It's because of anchoring bias.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people have a tendency to believe the first thing they hear,
Yes.
whether or not the facts bear it out
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
road,
Yeah.
which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Look throughout
I
history,
think
see how many times regimes do this, how often they do this. This is like
it's
a,
interesting. It's
a
an
primary
interesting
function of
perspective.
regimes, right? Yeah.
But I think what's happened is, I think maybe 60 years ago, we jumped the shark. And, remember when Fonzie, jumped over the
Hmm.
shark with his leather
Yeah.
jacket on? And it was like, that was the end of Happy Days. I think we jumped the shark with the JFK assassination and trying to convince America, here's what
Yes.
happened. And I think, even church going, slacks wearing folks were like, what?
Well,
Come
and
on.
not only did we do that, we doubled down and killed his brother.
Doubled down and killed his brother, tripled down, killed Martin Luther King Jr. the same year,
Yeah.
within months of each other.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so then all this other stuff happens. But then to me, the most egregious of the last 25 years was the Vegas shooting. And the reason this is different is because, as you were pointing out in the past, they would get ahead of the story in a manner that kind of, regardless of which way the story fell, they could kind of play their cards that they were kind of, on this side or that side, and
Hmm.
playing both sides of the street, basically. When I think things changed with JFK and his brother, Martin Luther King
Yeah.
Jr., and
Yeah.
it just goes, it's a slippery slope. By the time we get to this MBS assassination attempt in Las Vegas, the cover up story and the actual event are so different from one another that there's like this cognitive dissonance gap. It's, again, it's like if you met somebody, say, oh, no, it wasn't Stephen Paddock, it was Saudi commandos and helicopters that came from Mesa, Arizona.
Hmm.
People
So,
trying to kill MBS on Ashura. They would go, what? Where the hell
yeah.
did all that come from? The
So,
delta is so huge. I think the credibility gap is getting, and again, more and more
okay.
people now are digging in and going, this can't
I
be true.
think
Come on.
if I can give a little context, perhaps, and then I want to really hear from you the details and all of this because I need to piece this together in dialogues I'm having, and then just I need to kind of see the future a little bit better. So I want to bounce this off. So I agree with you. Mike Ferris and I had this conversation some months ago that a Cold War was launched in the early 1960s with the assassination of JFK. And that Cold War was between the financialist, globalist, bureaucratic, feudalist system and the oligarchs, the princes and oligarchs, what few princes remain, and the oligarchs.
Let's define all oligarchs for people who are listening that have heard this term thrown around
Yeah.
lately quite a bit incorrectly.
Yeah.
So, can you help people understand what a real definition of what an oligarch is? Because they're throwing the term around a lot right now, and then it's being misused.
So, okay. So the way I see the world, so let me articulate a little bit, me, and then correct me and help me with the right definition if I don't get it exactly right. To me, I see the world in the old princes, dukes, earls, kings. We haven't really gotten rid of that, right? We haven't lost that. We just don't have the titles anymore. And now we have another equally powerful but not capable class, which is the merchant princes, which is where we think the oligarchs. Inside of that, there's two classes of those oligarch figures, and one is on the finance side, finance banking side, and the other's on the industry and corporations, et cetera, right? Corporatism. And that can be conglomerates, doesn't necessarily, not like a CEO of a company, et cetera, but maybe the founder. And then on the other side, you have, so resentfuls on one side in the book I wrote, The Eternal War, and then responsibles on the other. And the other side are some actual princes, some dukes in the United Kingdom and His Royal Highness MBS and others who are, you know, formally titled individuals, but are also oligarchs in their own right. They're landowners, they're asset owners, they're fairly wealthy. That's a spectrum, right? But nowadays it's generally in the billions. But they exert more than they have more than just money. They exert political influence. They impact geopolitics. They impact the judiciary. They decide politicians. And, these are very powerful, influential people, not just rich people. So
It's very
that's
important distinction.
right. And
Very
there's a
important
whole lot of
distinction
rich
between
people.
Elon Musk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos
Yeah.
don't own fighter jets.
No.
MBS does,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
a big difference there.
Yeah.
Jeff
Well, and I
Bezos
would,
doesn't own any tanks.
no, I would also give one other group because there is a billionaire, small b, right? Um, who may not have tanks, but certainly has access to them, and that's Eric Prince. Eric Prince is an oligarch in the classical sense.
It's a roundabout way to
Indeed.
get to the top is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get into the PMC, cozy up to the power. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and
think of
inherit
oligarchs.
900 million from your dad doesn't hurt.
That doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
Well,
It's an interesting family too,
Footnote.
because he's
Footnote.
connected to Betsy DeVos and all that, right?
Oh,
yeah,
DeVos
Jesus.
family's
yeah,
Amway. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the Amway family.
yeah. So
So
if I might, I think the Cold War was declared between the resentfuls, the merchant princes, the financialists, right? And the financial kill chain I've written and Tom Luongo and I talked about um, in the 1960s. And that infrastructure, that modern Praetorian system goes back quite a ways. It goes back to the 1600s, but really was instantiated where the power transitioned to the bureaucratic systems, what I call the mob state, back to the Meyer-Lansky conversation, right? And Lucky Luciano and et cetera. And the cross, were the Dulles brothers in World War II and the establishment of the CIA and all of that. Okay. So that transitioned martial power, right? World War I ended, nobility, and martial power mostly handed over to states. And in World War II, we instantiated the mob state. So they have most of the martial power, well, again, till Eric Prince comes along, and actual princes. So it was a Cold War. And there were some assassinations here and there. Um, there was some setbacks here and there. But for the most part, the financialist, the modern Praetorians and their mob states have been on the ascendant since the 1960s when they assassinated more than just those three and got away with it. And the oligarchs and princes didn't, the people didn't rally to the few good oligarchs and princes and say, whoa, 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 we're not doing this. So they've been on the ascendant. In 2016, the Cold War went up another level with Brexit, where actual dukes and princes and a queen, very carefully, right, because they don't have a lot of power, but they do have influence, and American oligarchs and others in the world, like Putin, well, I don't want to say Putin because he's not a totalitarian dictator. He doesn't have that kind of power. He'd be dead. He's Russian. They would kill him, right? It's not Stalin. Stalin was Georgian anyways. But point being is, Brexit occurred because the responsibles said, we're not doing this anymore. We are stepping forward. We've been organizing ourselves for 60 years. We have the wealth now. We've got the technologies. We've got coverage from space down, right? We got terrestrial. We got intelligence assets. We've got PMCs now. We've got, that are just as good, if not better than. We've got the NGOs that got intel capabilities, et cetera. We don't want a hot war, but we're not doing this anymore and we're taking power back. Okay. Trump being elected, quite despite every attempt to prevent him from being elected, was the next declaration of we're not going, we're done. We're done with the mob state. My belief is that the war went hot in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been on an escalator ride ever since then. And it ain't over yet. Right? And the last
As evidenced
public
by
demonstration
so
was the
the
attempt on
evidence
Butler.
being
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Okay.
So if you can
Well,
walk us through Vegas and, because I'm not deep dove it, right? But I'd be very interested because I was in uniform. Well, I had just left uniform, but I was doing OSINT stuff, right? So I left special operations and I was doing open source intelligence stuff and computational stuff during my doctoral studies. And it is my belief that things went hot in Vegas, and we need to really understand that event better to understand other things that have happened since and that are happening now. And very much Trump's in Riyadh right now.
right.
Just did the speech, right? And he just called everything that I just said. He just told the mob state, the neocons, we are done. The Middle East is good. They're going to take care of themselves. We are done with all of this, right? So what did he do?
Yeah.
He just, again, openly declared, and they already tried to shoot him,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Both of them.
Try to shoot MBS. So it's interesting.
Right.
He went to see MBS to do this very speech for the world. What is that saying? We now know that Russia and China are not going to go. If we have to go to war with ourselves, the Middle East is going to take care of itself. Russia's not going to get involved. China's not going to get involved. And now we can clean our own house. So that's my supposition. And I believe that
very powerful
first hot action in this conflict was Vegas. So please walk us through that. Yeah.
It's quite possible. It all kind of started before the actual Vegas shooting. The research from the Vegas shooting took me back to an article from 2015 that was in the Guardian. And Tommy, if I can share my screen, I'll show this to the audience and to him so everybody. Here we go. So this was in the Guardian. The title of the article is Saudi Royal calls for regime change in Riyadh.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And I mean, this is effectively the documentation of the planning of a coup d'etat.
Yeah.
They've all right. So you've got King Salman is already in power.
Yeah.
And a number of crown princes have been pushed aside already. One of which was Mukrin bin Abdulaziz, who was the head of the GIP, which is their CIA. His son was Mansour bin Mukrin. So Mansour bin Mukrin, his dad, is crown prince.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there going, are you kidding me? My dad is going to be king? That means I'm going to be crown prince. That means, 20 years from now, I'm the man. I am the guy, man. I am going to be king of Saudi Arabia. My dad's about to be king. I'm going to be king. I believe it was Mansour bin Mukrin who authors the letter that's published in here. They publish a letter, and it's still online, I think. And it's written in Arabic about their dissatisfaction with the selection of MBS as crown prince. And at the point that this happens, they've already pushed aside a second crown prince who was Mohammed bin Nayef. Mohammed bin Nayef was another GIP guy that we gave the George Tenet CIA award to for great partnerships of, it's like, oh God, we suck at this. We fall for it. It's like we're just terrible at it. And yet I watch what we're doing with China. We'll talk about that another time with the whole bird flu thing. And it's kind of crazy how they let Peter Daszak into China. If I was China, I would never let Peter Daszak into the country. I would never let Callahan into the country. They're crazy. Back to this guy, Mansour bin Mukran. I believe he's the guy behind this article. He's the guy who writes the letter. Why is that? Why do I think it was Mansour bin Mukran? His dad was crown prince and was pushed aside. So he's got a chip on his shoulder now. He was going to be king. Now he's not. And on November 5th, the night of the long sword, when everybody's rounded up at the Ritz-Carlton, Mansour bin Mukran didn't make it. His helicopter was shot out of the sky that day. An eye for an eye. You plan a helicopter assault on my family? I'll take you and your whole entourage. I don't care. All 11 of you died that same day, November 5th.
Yep.
All right, so this is an eye for an eye. Now, Al-Walid bin Talal is a direct descendant. He's the grandson of Ibn Saud. All right, so these are direct descendants. Al-Walid bin Talal is going, I'm the guy. I built Riyadh Tower, for God's sakes. How am I not next in line to be king? I'm 70-something years old. I'm the biggest individual shareholder in Twitter. I'm the biggest individual shareholder in Apple. And I am not going to be the king? You're making he's 31 years old. What are you doing? And so they're just like, all right, Salman's lost it. Bin Salman, the king, he's off the reservation. He's making his 31-year-old son crown prince. He pushes Mohammed bin Nayef aside. He pushes Mukran bin Abdulaziz aside. And the irony here is Bruce Rydell at Brookings doesn't figure any of this out and thinks MBS is off the reservation and tells all their paying subscribers at Brookings that MBS is off the reservation, has lost his mind, can't be controlled. It's like, whoa, he's rounding everybody up.
That's the key phrase right there. Can't be controlled. Yeah.
And I don't know. So again, we come back to the CIA planting these common memories with film, right? That we all can relate to. The film was Syriana.
Yeah.
All right. So Syriana had Clooney. It had the Bourne Identity kid, Matt Damon. Affleck, Damon, Clooney are all in Syriana. Syriana is a story of two brothers in a Middle Eastern country and how we prefer one over the other.
Yep.
And it is as close to this, except in this MBS Las Vegas thing, it was cousins, not brothers. And we've got relationships with the old guard, and certainly not with the 31-year-old and his dad.
And the uncle's a big investor in Twitter and in Apple, two of the biggest collection entities in the world. He provided his funds, right?
And Citigroup. He bailed out Citigroup after September 11th. He was the one who came in and bailed out Citigroup.
Yeah.
So, So he's sitting in the catbird seat for all this stuff. And then November 5th, MBS rounds them up, and Al-Walid bin Talal and Bakr bin Laden, the head of bin Laden Construction Group, who built all the football stadiums out there.
Yep.
I mean, these are big names. This is like rounding up Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Mark Cuban and placing them all under arrest. And everybody's going, what? And the reason is corruption.
Yeah, but
corruption.
I have a quick question for you.
What the hell kind of corruption?
Timeline-wise, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I remember Trump went to Riyadh, I think to the Arab League meeting, and did the introduction of the counterterrorist center. Was that in Dubai, I think? I can't remember exactly.
I don't recall.
But he did the presentation for the Counterterrorism Intelligence Center for the Middle East, which allowed then for top secret and above intelligence to be shared. Did that happen before that November 5th, 2017 or after?
I don't recall. I know his trip to Saudi Arabia was the first trip during his first presidency. It was his first
So
overseas
it would have
trip.
been 16. So there would have been an intel transfer,
17.
17. Yeah, excuse me.
17.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah,
Yeah,
17.
excuse me. Yeah, 17. Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
there would have been already a substantive intel transfer sharing
Yes,
directly
potentially.
without going through the proper channels, which would have then made
Of the
MBS a
unrest.
far bigger target. Because if
No
he's
doubt.
if
No doubt.
he's the crown prince and he's getting his stuff together and he's got the support of the people and now he's got all this intel.
If that, I'll have to look up when that event occurred.
Yeah, it might have been
I
after.
know that
Yeah.
the president visited, so Trump visits Saudi Arabia the first time when they rolled out the red carpet, not the purple carpet.
Yeah.
And that was May of 2017. So he's been inaugurated, he's in office a little bit, he makes the trip, and he goes over to Saudi Arabia. In fact, it's the same time of year, May 2017. I believe that during that trip, he had said this publicly. He said, they've got paperwork, there's a list, they know who did this.
Yeah.
And he's implying it's the Saudis. And he's like, when I'm president, you're going to find out what happened. I think he went over and sat down with Mohammed bin Salman and said, who the hell is this guy? Who the hell is this guy? Who's this guy? Bin Bakr, bin Bubu, bin Bab. Who are these people? And I think Mohammed bin Salman said, those are the same people that want to kill me and my son.
Yeah.
And I think that was the conversation. And I think the conversation was very simple. I think the king said, I trust my son, Mohammed.
Yeah.
I trust my son, Khalid.
Yeah.
The rest of them are greedy bastards. And quite frankly, I wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them.
Or who worked
MBS,
for
by the way, MBS,
who worked for your people, and maybe you
MBS
might not want to trust them.
imprisoned his brother. He imprisoned his own brother, the astronaut.
Yeah.
And it was MBS's brother who's the first Arabian astronaut to go to space. He's in jail. He participated in trying to kill him.
So May trip is when he opened that counterterrorism center.
Okay. All right. So it might have been part of the same trip.
Yeah.
I believe the conversation between Trump and bin Salman. I think the king says, I trust two men in the world.
Yeah.
MBS, KBS, Khalid bin Salman, Mohammed bin Salman.
Yeah. If you want peace in the Middle East, these are the two I trust.
And all these names.
Yeah.
The enemy of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? They all want to kill me. Probably want to kill you too, my friend.
Yeah.
You want to know who did September 11th? The guys who want to take over the country, want to kill my son and kill me. Yeah. That's who they are.
Yeah. And here's who helped them because there's intel sharing. And oh, by the way, here's who helped them. Yeah.
All right. So what happens next? The next thing that happens is MBS and Jared Kushner and Ivanka start hanging out together.
Yeah, I remember.
All right. So Ivanka's 6 feet tall and blonde hair. He doesn't get to see a whole lot of that. And Kushner's got billions to throw. I don't know, right? So Kushner's managing money, real estate, Park Avenue, all this other stuff. Donald Trump says to bin Salman, the king, well, I trust two people. It's my daughter and my son-in-law.
Yeah.
And let's figure this out and let's reset this thing. And so MBS, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka become very close.
Oh yeah.
Very close.
Right
up until the Vegas shooting. October 1st, 2017 was Ashura. Ashura is the Muslim equivalent of Passover.
Yeah.
It's when they tell the children this. So again, a lot of people don't know that the Muslim religion celebrates, reads the Old Testament. They're down with the Old Testament. They're down with
The
Jesus,
book.
right? So he
Yeah.
bought
Yeah.
he bought Salvator Mundi, the Leonardo da Vinci's painting of Jesus Christ is Salvator Mundi, the Savior of the world. So they're down with Jesus. They're down with the Old Testament, but they've got different names for stuff. So whereas Jews have Passover and tell the story of Moses and all this stuff in the river, Muslims do the same thing, but at a different time of year, and they have different names for stuff. So they don't call it Passover; they call it Ashura. But it's the story of Exodus. It's the same story. It's the story of Moses, the river, Egypt. Let my people go and cross the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea. It's all that. Ashura is October 1st, 2017. What better place to tell the children the story of Ashura than in a Four Seasons suite overlooking the pyramid at the Luxor, overlooking the Sphinx at the Luxor? Right? We don't have a Four Seasons at Giza. There is no actual hotel in Giza where you can, look out over it like that. So if you're going to tell the kids the story of Exodus, Al-Walid bin Talal insists that MBS take the whole wing of the hotel. I own it. Al-Walid bin Talal is the 45% owner of the Four Seasons at the time. No longer. He had to liquidate some of that asset. And MBS came to explain that, by the way, to Bill Gates, the other 45% owner. Bill Gates and Al-Walid bin Talal were partners in the Four Seasons. Isidore Sharp retained 10% of the company. He's the founder. And I used to work there. I worked at the Four Seasons. All right. Al-Walid bin Talal, at the time of the Vegas shooting, owns 45% of the hotel. The whole company. So he's in a position to say to MBS, I insist, bring the wives, bring the kids, bring your whole entourage. I'm just going to give you the whole wing. Floors 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, all the way up, right? You get the whole wing. I insist. It's Ashura. That's how they place him there. That's how they can guarantee he's going to be there. And MBS says, are you sure? Really? It seems too generous. No, of course not. Come on. I insist. It's a really important holiday. So important that you might want to invite VIP guests to join you. The rumor was Trump was in Vegas, but Donald Trump was meeting the next morning with Prayut Chan-o-cha, the Prime Minister of Thailand. It was a big deal in Thailand because the Prime Ministers never met with the President of the United States. And for Prayut Chan-o-cha to be in Washington meeting with the President was a big deal. And I was in Thailand at the time. So the President wasn't in Vegas, but somebody else with the last name Trump may have been. Ivanka. A Citation C-550 lands at 10 o'clock p.m., came in from Sacramento. Might that have been Jared Kushner and KBS flying back from meetings that day in order to meet up with MBS and Ivanka? Maybe. It lands at 10 p.m. and it taxis to Signature Flight Services, also owned by Bill Gates. And that's when all hell breaks loose. At 10:05 p.m., the gunfire begins just as that Citation C-550 taxis up to Signature Flight Services. And we see guys on the runway carrying rifles on the infrared camera that the helicopter, infrared FLIR camera, got a bunch of footage, and you see guys carrying long weapons across the runway, and we hear air traffic control say, we've got shooters on the runway. All right, so there's a whole lot more that went down that night. All of SWAT, the whole SWAT crew, is probably at Signature's Flight Services because we've only got one SWAT guy breaching the suite an hour into the thing. Where's the rest of the SWAT? I got Zebra 20 up there. Where's Zebra 1 through 19? Where are all they? Where's Zebra 2, Zebra 3, Zebra 4? Where's Zebra 7? Where is everybody? Oh, you're all at Signature Flight Services in a gun battle? Holy mackerel. Because you got one guy upstairs breaching the door, and as soon as he breaches the door, bang, good shot. Where the hell did he shoot? You shoot a dead guy? Stephen Paddock had been dead for hours. Why would he shoot the guy? Well, if I was the bad guy, I don't know. Did you ever work in the counterintelligence side? Did you ever work on the figure out what the bad guys are doing by putting yourself in the head of the bad guy?
I was a targeting guy.
I'd prop the dead guy up in a chair. I'd prop the dead guy up in a chair, tape him up, and prop an AR-15 under his arm, pointing at the front door. As soon as the cops break in, they think there's a guy sitting there with a gun pointing at him. And they're going to put one right in his mouth.
Yeah.
Ta-da! That's what they did. How do we know that's what they did? Because there's a chair missing from all the photographs. The room is set with 2 chairs at that little table. Where's the other chair? Where'd you guys put the chair? Would you move the chair every time you took the photo because it's got cherry pie all over it? That's where the autism comes in. I notice the things that are missing, the space between the notes. The chair that is there happens to be sitting right in front of the broken window, meaning he would have shot all those people without moving the chair and then closed the curtain before he killed himself. The hell kind of narrative? It's like a 7-year-old could come up with a better cover story than this. And the window's not broken. So now we realize it's an assassination attempt on MBS. And MBS must have said to Trump, please let me do this my way. I will catch these guys and I will punish them the right way. Trump says, how much time are you going to need? Less than 90 days. Aaron Rouse, the special agent in charge of the FBI in Vegas, is the former counterterrorism head at the FBI in Quantico. So they take the head of counterterrorism and move him to Vegas. And he tells everybody, yeah, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to get it right. We got to get it right. All this happy horse shit. And Trump says, no. We gotta give our brother in Riyadh a little time to take care of business. And November 5th, it's not even 5 weeks later. November 5th, he rounds them all up. They got an invitation from the king, not from MBS. The invitation came from the king. There was going to be a celebration, some sort of party. And I don't recall, I'm a little dyslexic. I don't recall if it was Ciara or Kiara or Kanisha. Is some chick with a bippy top who dances around chicks' restaurant. It's one of those. Is going to be the entertainer at this thing at the Ritz-Carlton, Riyadh. And the invitation is from King Salman. And everybody shows up. And they lock the doors behind them. And Eric Prince and the team come in with 2 feet of garden hose. And we're going to apply the garden hose to the soles of your feet. And Al-Walid bin Talal is tortured for months. He loses a good portion of his fortune. He's forced to turn it over to MBS. And is basically left as like a hollow shell of what he had before. He's forced to liquidate a good portion of his ownership in the Four Seasons. He's now down to like 20-something% from 45%.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that remaining 20% was MBS.
Yeah.
Because MBS went and met with Bill Gates shortly after all this stuff, basically to tell Bill, listen, I'm going to be your new partner in the Four Seasons. So, and we cover it up so that he can round these guys up. Mansour bin Mukran gets killed. And then a year later to the day, Jamal Khashoggi was granted an appointment to get his marriage license in Turkey. A year to the day.
Yeah.
Jamal Khashoggi used to work with Al-Walid bin Talal and was number 2 at the GIP before he decided to become a journalist. So before he was a journalist working for the Washington Post, he was the number 2 guy at the Saudi CIA,
Yeah.
working for Bandar bin Abdulaziz, I think, back then. So yeah, he was very well connected to both Al-Walid bin Talal and to the GIP. It's called the General Intelligence Presidency in Saudi Arabia. And it appears he helped fund and plan this with Al-Walid bin Talal, but he's not a Saud. It's like The Godfather. It's like you can't kill Fredo while mommy's alive. It's that kind of thing. It's like killing another Saud, but Jamal Khashoggi's not a Saud. So I can send a hell of a message if I film his dismemberment. Right? If I film his dismemberment and show it at the next family gathering, the next get together of all the princes, that might shake him up a bit. They get to see the footage, getting his fingers cut off one at a time, then his hand, then his arm, cut his tongue out, cut his ears off.
Same video goes to Langley and to London.
Love it. And everybody knows MBS isn't effing around. And if you want to work with Saudi, you're gonna keep the secret. Now at the same time, MBS knows how to show his gratitude. $600 billion deal. We're gonna make it $1 trillion. Trump says, "You got the money. Get the hell out of here. We're gonna make it $1 trillion." And MBS laughs it off. MBS says to Jared Kushner, "I'll give you $2 billion line of credit." How's that? They've got a bond forged in blood that night. They escaped together, I believe. I don't know if Ivanka was there, but I believe Jared was there. And I think that Jared and MBS were on the same helicopter getting out of there that was provided by Maverick Helicopters. Greg and Ginny Rockna. Greg used to fly for the Army. I think it was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And ends up with a fleet of 50 helicopters at $3.5 million, $3 million, $3.2 million each that do Vegas tours, Grand Canyon tours, and he's got a bunch out in Hawaii. So when you own 50 helicopters, you can be certain you're going to end up with a lunch date one day with the guys at Langley who say, "Listen, if we're ever in a jam and we've got a situation, we got to exfiltrate, can we count on you for 8 or 10 birds, right? With 10, 15 minutes notice?" Your former army, and of course, what's the guy going to say? He's going to say, of course you can. If you got a bunch of VIPs in here from Qatar and Abu Dhabi and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose and you got to get them out, yeah, of course you call me. Who the hell are you going to call? Sundance? They're a bunch of losers. They don't know what they're doing, and Sundance is now out of business. So of course he agrees to help out. And all his pilots are ex-military. They're all former military pilots, and they know how to keep a secret. They've seen all kinds of shit. So it looks like MBS was evacuated by Maverick. I believe Jared Kushner may have been with him. That explains the bond. It explains the $2 billion line of credit. And no one outside of those circles seems to be aware of it. Besides, the people who follow my research, the fact that Brookings and Stratfor and all of these consulting firms, the think tank firms, are going along with the MBS is off the reservation, can't be controlled, watch out before he kills the rest of his cousins kind of thing. It's just, it doesn't explain things as well as this story does, which is if you tried to kill him with helicopters, well, yeah, he's going to kill the guy who did it with a helicopter, Mansour bin Mukrin. And rounding everybody up November 5th kind of makes a little bit more sense if it was an assassination attempt than it was corruption. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, "Our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments." A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Let's look at another piece, and thank you for that. Okay, thank you for all the detail. The rapport building, backing down of hostilities between Saudi Arabia and Iran started shortly after that.
And Israel.
And Israel. A conflict that isn't native to the House of Saud, but was forced upon them or pressed upon them.
Which one? Which conflict? Yemen?
Well, both with Iran and no. The conflict with Israel and the conflict with Iran.
Right.
It's not something the House of Saud really cares to be involved in or ever cared to be involved in.
Right.
So, we've been using, the Brits have been using the oil monies and the flow of oil monies and all of the relationships and logistics in and out of the region there to use the House of Saud and its precursors to, we'll give you the safety and security you need, but we need you to cause chaos here for a century.
And when they don't step up, that's when MI6 steps in.
Correct.
And that's when you end up with a chemical attack in Syria that becomes the springboard for, well, then Bashar Assad has to go.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, what? There was a chemical attack in Aleppo on a school, and the MI6 just happens to be there to film it.
Oh yeah,
I'm married in the photographer's house, right? So the guy who films the chemical attack in Aleppo just happened to be there, right? As all this happens, and this is the springboard for, well, then Bashar Assad's got to go, and MI6 just happens to be there, huh?
So let's go back to prior
They'll
to that.
They'll take matters into their hands. My point is, if Saudi won't play, won't play ball.
Yeah.
MI6 will just step in. They don't,
okay, so was 9/11 one of those Saudi wasn't going to play ball.
I don't
So
know.
let's send 19
Yeah,
of Saudi's people, and somehow miraculously a passport survives all of that chaos and was
from
found.
Egypt, right? And the passport's from Egypt, right? It's
From
an
Egypt.
Egyptian
Yeah.
passport, floats onto
Yeah.
Broadway,
The
Yeah.
FBI
and
agents
15
find
of the
it.
19, yeah, 15 19 guys are Saudis. Now, again, I think September 11th was legitimately sort of the precursor of the Vegas shooting, in the fathers of these
Yes.
guys
Yes. Yeah.
wanted to sink
I,
transportation, banking. Look at what
I think,
happened.
I don't know about that. I think His Majesty didn't want destabilization in the Middle East anymore. I've known people who've
Okay,
worked with the family, very close with the family. They
yeah,
Keep going. I got
want to
this.
evolve their country beyond oil.
right.
Well, that requires
Like
attracting,
Syriana,
yeah,
right? That's the
right.
plot line in
Yeah,
Syriana,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right, right.
I mean, they genuinely do. A friend of mine
Of
wrote
course,
His
of
Majesty's
course.
2030 plan. So we have
Neon.
intentionally kept the Middle East, despite all of its wealth, from, the Arab world in particular, from rising as an academic, economic, technological, power. And how do you do that when you have
Mm,
all this oil money pouring in? Constant violence and threat. And if they
mm-hmm.
and you use that, use one entity against another, et cetera. And if they won't play ball, then you figure out how to use elements within their own country to pay, so we've been running around saying that Saudi Arabia has been behind terrorism for the last 25 years, 26 years because of 9/11. Were they? Probably not. Probably didn't want to
Right,
be
right.
behind terrorism. So we framed them
It's
for it.
another interesting twist that you're suggesting. So we had Hamas, we
Mhm.
had the legacy terrorism organizations that didn't seem to be
The
getting the job
classics.
done,
Yeah,
right?
the
And so
classics.
so so along comes Al Qaeda because we weren't quite getting the job done with Hamas, so it wasn't enough chaos. Al Qaeda comes along, they start wreaking havoc, and we kind of blame Al Qaeda on Wahhabi Saudis, right? It was
Yes.
basically
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Al Qaeda is hatched out of Wahhabism,
Yeah.
which is ultra conservative
Yeah.
Saudi, and that ties into the September 11th thing, where again saying that Bin Laden did it,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing the footage of Bin Laden seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Who the hell did this?
Yeah.
Is this amazing?" He's like, "God bless this guy. Who did
Yeah.
this?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Muhammad Atta." He's like, "Who the hell's Muhammad Atta? I love this guy."
Yeah.
He's like, he didn't know, he didn't have a clue what was going on. And where the hell's this Muhammad Atta guy come from? How the hell we get his passport on Broadway
Yeah.
when a friend of mine's wife was in the building? You got nothing back. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Not a
Yeah.
finger.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So,
So I think they tried to get World War III with the global war on terror,
mm-hmm.
right? So the
Send
Declaration of
us.
Independence that was Brexit and then Trump's presidency, first presidency, which really was a declaration of independence from the mob state. We're not doing this
Indeed.
anymore, right?
Right.
Western civilization, British civilization, and Americans an adjunct to we're not doing this anymore. So there's a Declaration of Independence in
Right.
2016.
Right.
Um, the global war on terror started a decade and a half earlier
Right.
because the Cold War had heated up to enough of a place to where the resentful oligarchs and bureaucratic state and the mob state realized that we're losing grip here, that the
Mm-hmm.
princes and the oligarchs are standing up and they never forgot the Kennedys. They're not going to let that go.
Right. Right. Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
And rightfully
Yeah.
so, because if they do, they lose everything because they know they're the next target, because that's the way these things
Indeed. Right.
go. Right?
Right.
And so they launch 9/11 to try and kick off a holy war, to kick off World War III. Only it doesn't work. Now we do, war all over the world. I mean, we were fighting 125 countries at one point, but it's not, peer on peer, force on force kind of stuff. And it turns out that when Langley and SOCOM, Langley and Tampa fight each other around the
Mhm.
world, they're pretty damn good at it. They don't need the big
Oh, sure.
armies and the, industrial scale
We,
stuff.
we
It's
can
like,
put on a hell of a show. Yeah, we can put on a show
right?
without anybody showing up to fight back, right?
Show right up in your
Shock and
house
awe,
in the
baby.
middle of the night. Well, I mean,
Shock and
we
awe.
just show up in your
Looks like a
house in the
war.
middle of the night, no matter where it is, in Pakistan or wherever the hell, okay, in
Yeah.
your guarded compound. Okay.
What a shock and awe, right? We
Yeah,
went to war with Iraq and they didn't even know it, right?
I didn't
We
even
just
know it.
showed up one night and looked like a war, looked a hell
Yeah.
of a lot like a war. And all the Iraqis are like, what the hell's going on around here?
Well,
What do
not
we
only
do?
that, but we'd done a cavalry charge in Afghanistan years earlier with what was it, 12 good, or what was that? The horse soldiers, the 555 guys. What was the movie?
Really?
12 Strong or whatever it was
Really?
about the Green Berets. I mean, there's a movie about it. They got on the horses, they went into Afghanistan, they rode horses, and then they're riding horses. I mean, what is that? That's like cavalry charge, right? Just with Green
Yeah.
Berets. Which, as a former Green Beret, that's some badass stuff. And I've known a couple of those guys, and they're pretty damn good guys. But point being is that they didn't get their World War,
Right. Right.
right? And okay,
Now we need
and
ISIS
then Brexit happens,
and
and
ISIS.
and ISIS
Gonna start burning
um,
people in oil and
still didn't get the World War
drowning them in
because
cages.
again, it turned
Right.
out that between NGOs, and PMCs and SOCOM, we're pretty good at handling that when the gloves were taken off, right? Okay.
This is SOCOM versus Langley again, right? So this
It's
is
exactly, it's Langley and Tampa, right?
blue
This
on
is
red.
like
Didn't,
Blue
whose
on
team?
red. Yeah.
sorry,
So,
didn't something
yeah.
happen towards
Yeah,
the end
yeah.
of Trump's first term? I remember it was a big thing. I forget who was his Ezra Watkin who stepped in for whatever but there was some speech towards it was like December 2020, where there's this big thing about for the first time since Kennedy, they were taking away like the paramilitary authorization of the CIA from JSOC or something.
So Kennedy tried,
I don't know
yeah,
if that
no, it would have been,
continued or if that
from
reversed under
Langley.
Biden.
So Kennedy tried to remove it. Well, Eisenhower tried to remove it. Kennedy tried to remove it. Reagan mentioned it. He got shot. Got to remember that. Reagan got shot broad
Yeah.
daylight too,
And
right?
Hinckley's family that night was having dinner with one of the Bush, Neil Bush.
You can't make this.
Funny
I just
coincidence.
can't.
Funny coincidence.
Can't. Oh my God. Yeah, the paramilitary was, the CIA was never supposed to have paramilitary.
Yeah.
That's what the Green Berets were founded for. That was our task and mission. All the way back to the Korean War, they were trying to remove that, and et cetera. But point being is, not only did the global war on terror not get the World War, the ISIS didn't, but Brexit happened, quite despite all the machinations and effort. And so the United Kingdom, which has been lived off of parasitically by this, financialist kill chain since the 1600s, had finally said that's enough. And they didn't say that alone. Remember that little walk with Trump walking in front of Her Majesty, the Queen?
I don't.
I don't think
I don't
that was an
recall.
accident because nobody walks in front of the Queen.
Right. Right.
It's a message. Where's his mom from? His mother's from Scotland. She's a Scot. I think it was a message. The center of the old empire has transitioned power to the new empire, just like Rome to Byzantium or Rome to Constantinople in a way in the 300s.
Do you think the photo, the AI photo that he shared of him as Pope, was also a bit of foreboding? Or do you
I
think it was
don't
just
know about that one. I think yes, but I think that one wasn't in the same manner of Her Majesty. I think yes. I think that one is more of a threat. We know what you're doing, Vatican,
Okay.
flooding this country with tens of millions of Catholics. We know what you're doing, and we're the English, and we're the first.
You don't think he
civil-
had any foreknowledge that the Pope was going to end up being an American Pope, and that basically he's saying,
I-
if it's an American Pope, well then I'm. Pope. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I don't
If the
think
Pope's
so.
American, I'm the Pope. Come
Yeah.
on.
I think what it was is that they knew that they were going to do the American because we're the target. We are the target.
Okay.
They have to take us
Okay.
down next because we're the only one with the assets to recollateralize their global financial system. Nobody else has them but the United States.
We sure have some skeletons in the closet if they wanted to go looking for them. I mean, holy mackerel. Pick a jurisdiction. I mean, holy moly, they
They
got
have
20 to work
flooded
with
this
here.
country with tens of millions of Catholics, right? So, and the Pope that they picked was a big tell. It
Interesting.
told us where their focus is, where the attack is coming, and he's a wokest Pope, right? He's in support of all this. Okay, so that's the vector, and that's now. But to go back, Brexit happens, Trump gets into office, Russiagate doesn't work. One, because it's totally
impeachments,
totally trashed. Yeah, it's all trash, made up garbage,
wrapped up in all this impeachment stuff
right?
throughout the whole term.
The whole thing. ISIS doesn't work because he's in office, and within 4 weeks, ISIS is destroyed.
They wipe him out, right?
Destroyed, right? Okay, and that didn't take massive mobilization. No. It's just Eric, Tampa, gloves are off, right? Gloves are off. Okay.
Takes us to Butler. It's
so well.
The
They first, then they do lawfare. They flood the United States and the United Kingdom with foreigners and Ireland, because, by the way, as much as the Irish are angry at the English for rightful reasons for centuries, right? Europe still considers the Irish to be English, British, plain coldly members of the English civilization, right? And so they flood all the old empire with foreigners that hate us. And they do all this woke stuff and all this, oppression and surveillance state and
we're seeing it in
just
Sweden,
lost the word, right?
But we're seeing it throughout. It's not just the UK and Ireland. I mean, we're seeing it in Sweden. We're seeing it
but
in
that's
Germany.
different.
We're seeing it in
It's
Munich,
different.
right?
It's different. Right. It's true, but I suspect there's a much darker intent, much darker.
Okay.
A la death labor camps, pre-World War II, to rapidly reindustrialize. So you can't just flood you can't flood your enemy and not also have some of it happen to you, because then it's so obvious. But you've got an intent for you've got a plan for yours, and you want to, the way this resentful mind work, they push the wokest stuff, they push the Marxist stuff as hard as they can, and then they pivot right of left to the whole fascist Nazi stuff. And they want you to go there, and they want you to go this hard ethno-nationalist, et cetera. And we're going to have to get rid of millions of people. But we need to be very careful not to let them push us into hatred and genocide and, ethno-genocide, et cetera. We got to be real careful. And I'm seeing it all over Twitter now. I'm seeing it all over in the messaging, et cetera. But back to the 4 years in between, they go after Trump and other oligarchs, right? Princes, not just here, but in the UK and elsewhere, with all this lawfare, to include some of their own people. Maybe like one of the co-founders of Google. Keep them online. Okay. That didn't work. Trump stays free, right? Other oligarchs get behind him. Then the surveillance state, censorship, that was the word I was trying to find earlier. Sorry, I have word recall issues sometimes because of brain injuries. I'm just old and retarded too, so that doesn't help.
That's my excuse. I'm old and retarded.
Then this guy, where did Elon go when he was talking about buying Twitter for $45 billion?
Because Our Lead is the biggest individual shareholder. He's got to get Our Lead's green light.
Well,
and originally Our Lead said no.
I don't think that's what happened. I think what he did is he went and got the funding And there was a conversation, Alois, that you're going to do this.
That's very possible.
You're going to do this.
I don't know. So again, Alwaleed plays as if he's a big shot,
Yeah.
but he may have no cards left at all,
He's a
and
Soros.
it's all a bluff.
He's a Soros. He's a
I
made
think,
man.
but yeah, but
Yeah.
I think he's lost his.
I totally agree.
Well,
Totally
he's probably
agree.
allowed to stay alive, and they're like, you get to pretend to
That's
be a big
exactly.
shot.
And your family stays alive.
Your
And your
family-
family isn't
Right.
impoverished.
You get a couple
Here's what I
rolls in
wanna
a
ask you about.
plane, but you're
Yeah.
gonna.
Here's
you're-
what I want to ask you about. Soros is sort of the caricature of this globalist bad guy
Yeah.
who's basically funding everything that seems the
He's an
antithesis of
asset.
what.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's an MI6
who
asset.
are so? Let's set him aside, and let's talk about who are the real players at the table. Who are
Dutch.
It's
The
funny
Dutch.
you say that, man. I have a connection with a Dutch nurse that's been helping me through this bird flu thing,
Mm.
and she's fantastic. And she's been kind of telling me, the Dutch, man, you don't understand the power that the
Dutch.
Dutch wield. It's unbelievable
They've
that you're
been-
saying this. We got to do a
okay.
whole nother show on this, Tommy.
We can do that. We can do
I
that.
want to hear this
Yeah, yeah.
because she has been feeding me stuff that now I got to share this with you. So now that
Yeah.
you said this, I'm going to have to show you a whole bunch of the stuff that she's been telling me about the oranges and this connection, and that how Trump has already acknowledged the oranges. And it's stuff that, quite frankly, has just been going over my head. Like I never got into all what's going on. in the
All
Netherlands
of this
and
goes back
How does that?
to the English Civil War.
And
all
we
of
used
it.
to be New Amsterdam, right? I mean, it was Peter
Well,
Stuyvesant before the British showed up, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of history here.
This goes
I'm
to the
amazed that you're saying this. This is
This
kind
goes
of
to a
freaking me out.
hostile corporate takeover by the Dutch East India Company of the British East India Company in 1688. Now they had
Ah.
tried it earlier and deposed the king by parliamentarians and investing in industrialists that were showing up on the Thames in the 1620s. They deposed the king, His Majesty
Wow.
King Charles I. King Charles I was the first English king, or the last, excuse me, truly English king who fought for the English people. They removed him and they beheaded him. And then Cromwell comes along. Cromwell thinks that he's, doing the right thing, the Puritan thing for the English, down with kings. And then he realizes, holy cow, there's a hostile takeover happening. It's supported by parliamentarians, so he disbands parliament. It's happening by bankers and industrialists out of Amsterdam, out of the House of Orange. And he says, no. And he has the power and the Roundheads and some of the nobles, and he has the capacity to
wild.
prevent the hostile takeover. He trains his son and educates his son for all of this, but his son just isn't the man. So they bring
Right.
Charles II back, but he's a drunk womanizer, useless guy. He's not a king. He's not a king for his people because he's a puppet. He
Andrew
was put
Cuomo.
on
It's like
the
Andrew Cuomo. Yeah.
and then they deposed James II in what's called the Glorious Revolution, which is anything else. It was a coup,
Dude,
a palace
dude.
coup.
Are you ready for this? You're gonna
Yeah.
get goosebumps. You're gonna get
Okay.
goosebumps on this.
Okay.
The Night of the Long Sword, November 5th, 2017,
Yep.
is the anniversary of the gunpowder plot
Yes.
against King James.
Yes.
Was
Yes.
November 5th, 1605.
V for
Yes.
Vendetta,
So the whole
yeah.
Guy Fawkes thing, they were
Yes.
trying to kill the King of England.
Yes. Who was?
The
Who
anniversary.
was? The Catholics, the continental Catholics were trying to kill the king.
English
But
Catholics, Robert
but here's the
Catesby.
thing.
Yep.
We keep pointing to the Catholics because that's the narrative. It wasn't
Right.
just the Catholics.
The Dutch
It
were
was the Dutch.
fascinated.
were the
We've got
gum-
to do another show on this. I'm
Okay.
amazed and fascinated by this.
Well, it gets to all of
And-
this, okay? Because
How poetic. How poetic that MBS does the Night of the Long Sword on the anniversary of the Night of the Gunpowder Plot.
so
tried
all
to
of
kill
this
the
goes
king?
back. All of this goes back to the British Empire. I don't like that
This is
term,
wild.
British. This goes back to the English throne. This goes back to a palace coup that removed a king and put a Dutch prince on the English throne. and did a hostile takeover of
Wow.
what would become the United Kingdom and then the British Empire, out of which the United States would spin out. Read some of the things that the founding fathers had to say about all that period of time. There's another reason why the colonials didn't feel that it was treason, and they worked so hard to, through the legal systems, through the public opinion, they worked so hard to rectify this because they were loyal Englishmen. But at one point, they
Mm-hmm.
realized that's not an Englishman on the English throne, that's a German. That's an occupier, and we don't ultimately have loyalty to him. Now, if there was a Stuart or a Plantagenet in the line that could go on the throne, or we could get on the throne, we would have loyalty to them. The actual direct descendant is living in Australia now, by the
Mm-hmm.
by, right?
Right,
So
right. I've
point
heard the
being
story.
is that they try to kill Trump and Butler. And by the way, there was a great conversation with you and Dale. That's why I reached
Thank you.
out to Tommy and said, I'd love to talk to this guy. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
it really gave me a lot of details, and I'm grateful for that. Um, for Ukrainians, all those ties go back to Ukraine. Who were the Azovs slash
Maybe.
Banderites, and
I
who did
mean,
they work for from 1947 all the way up through the 90s? And the CIA, they were the wet works guys. The great book, Operation Paperclip and Surprise Kill Vanish. She's
Andy
got
Jacobs, yeah.
pieces, Annie
yeah,
Jacobson,
yeah,
she's
yeah,
got
yeah,
pieces
yeah,
in
yeah,
both. Okay.
yeah.
So they failed in all of this. The princes are still here. The princes are still firmly resolved. No more of this. We are taking back power. We are retaking the old empire and the new empire, and we are taking back power. And you're not going to use us. You're not going to continue to impoverish us and to abuse and destroy our people. We're done. We're done. And you can try to kill us. We got these guys like Eric Prince, and there's others, right? We've got other peoples in other countries. So I'll give you another piece. Same time, 2016, 17.
Mhm.
What happened in Russia? Consolidation of power kicked out all of the foreign agents, all the foreign officers, all the foreign agents in banking, in business, etc. The oligarchs further empowered Putin, right, to take upon himself even greater powers to get rid of all of this, the financialist. Okay. What happened in 2017 in China? Same thing. The
Mhm.
oligarchs out there elevated Xi and said, get rid of
Mhm.
all of that infrastructure. They are almost completely embedded this financialist kill chain into China. If we don't stop this now, we are next. We are slated next to be taken down, right? To be executed through this financialist kill chain that's been going on since the 1600s.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Trump goes to Saudi Arabia today, bringing it back to Vegas, right? We're now
Mhm.
8 years on. Um, and if you listen to the speech he just gave,
Right.
it is a declaration, not just a, it is a, I want to be careful. I don't want to say it this way, but I'm going to have to say it this way. It is a declaration of war. And not a war with the world, but the war with this mob state, with the financialist. Okay. He now doesn't have to worry about war with Iran, war with Russia, war with China.
Mhm.
Now we can deal with the war at home. But his declaration in Riyadh, very carefully done, very extraordinarily well done, right? And very well received by His Highness, is necessitates. There is no way that the financialists can back down now. There's no off ramp for them. They know now they're not going to be able to wait him out for 3.5 more years.
What
That
is
that
it?
the responsibles are ready and
Mhm.
they know it, if you take us to civil war, okay.
My interpretation from I was listening to it right before we started this,
Yeah.
and I was listening to what he was saying, and my interpretation was he was putting MBS up on a pedestal a bit and basically saying, look, the United States, you don't necessarily need us here anymore. Like, he's got this, right?
Yeah.
MBS
Yeah.
has got this,
Yeah.
right? And there's an independence here where, we may not be as relevant as we were 50 years ago to the Middle East. And I think he basically passed the torch to MBS and said, "This is the
He
guy."
did that. Yeah, he did that in 17, though, right? He's just
To a
reaffirming.
degree, to a
He's just
degree,
reaffirming now.
I think yes, yes. And
If you listen specifically though to what he said,
I'm going to listen to it again as soon as we wrap up. I'm going to listen to it again.
in this context of this greater 400, 300 and some odd year fight, 360.
It's interesting though because he's
40-year fight.
mentioned the oranges. He's
Yes.
literally, and now I've got to go back and find that. I want to find out when he's referenced it, what the context was. I mean, I got to dig into this now.
So we know who our enemies are, and they are very powerful. They're embedded and oh, by the way, the whole India-Pakistan thing plays into this as well because they're all key. I wrote some articles called the Three Rings Theory that I developed about the old empire, right? The core of the old empire, the first ring, second ring. The American colonies are in the first, they're in the inner core. However, the United States is in the first ring. Well, Greater India is also in the first ring, right? That includes Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. They are also in the first ring. They are also embedded everywhere in the world because when the British Empire, again, I hate to say that, but that's what it's labeled. When the British Empire was really developing at its apex, it was the Scots who were the ones who managed and really built it out, but there wasn't a lot of Scots. So what we backfilled with was local peoples, Chinese and Indian in particular, because they turned out to be very good at business and, on the Indian, Chinese side, and they turned out to be very good at administration on the Indian side. So the British Empire embedded Greater Indians, to include Pakistanis, all over the former British Empire at every level, right? So if I was the Dutch and I was the old Venetian banking systems before that, because that's where the Venetian banks went, was to Amsterdam. And I had been using the old empire, the British Empire, for 340 years to be my military, my intelligence, my muscle around the world. And the princes finally had stood up and said, "Yeah, we're not doing that anymore," and actually meant it, and were sophisticated and knowledgeable and wealthy and clever and organized enough to do it and survive their own infiltration of their own security assets, etc. I would use any vector possible, and I wasn't able to draw the old empire other than the idiot, British government that's owned into World War III through global war and terror. I wasn't able to do it through Russia. I'm not going to be able to get it in Iran now. I'm not going to be able to get it to China. Maybe I can use the Indo-Pak vector. You notice how quickly that got shut down, though?
Yep. Less than a week. Less than a week.
Shut down.
Less than 5 days. This is gone. Like it didn't happen.
Right.
Like the crash over the Potomac.
Yeah.
Where Rebecca Loback was the pilot and her instructor disappeared. You don't hear about that anymore either.
So point being is
Langley is so powerful, EM. It's unreal to me. Langley, it appears to me,
it's not Langley though.
It's not that controls the media.
Langley's muscle. No, Langley's just muscle and assets.
So how is it that we hear this mockingbird type from the same thing from every channel on television?
Yes.
It's basically DHS now. If I had to guess, I'd say it's DHS now, based on nothing.
No. It's not Americans. It's not. No, it's again.
Who's controlling the media? How do we see this homogenous message come out overnight?
It's being done through that, but
as a channel. So you're saying it's a channel, but it's
and resources and access, but it's not where the coordination.
That's not the top of the food chain.
It's MI6, and really it's Brussels and ultimately Amsterdam.
I want to do another show with you to get into that aspect of it. The Brussels connection, what's going on in the Netherlands, the oranges, and how significant this is, because it's something that very few people talk about. You're one of the only people I've ever heard mention it. Mm-hmm. Tommy, I'm afraid I've got a hard stop. I've got I've got to tend to.
Good. You're good.
Yeah.
We've been going about 90 minutes. But I would love to get back with you and talk more about this. I think you're right. I think this MBS assassination attempt was a tipping point.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Trump was willing to accommodate him and let the narrative, the Stephen Paddock story, be the narrative while they got to work and caught the bad guys. Yeah. I believe, by the way, after the Jamal Khashoggi dust up, that he killed Jamal Khashoggi, there was something that happened in Riyadh, which was the public execution of the guys who supposedly killed Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah.
The guys who were executed publicly were the guys from the Vegas shooting that they kept in prison for a year. It's all a magic trick. It's all a big illusion. The guys who killed Jamal Khashoggi are his trusted guys. That's his guys. Boys. It's like, go chop them up, put them in bags, and bring them back. I'm making soup, and I'm going to serve it to the cousins. He didn't kill any of those guys. He told them what to do. They did exactly what he asked them to do. The guys they killed in public were either the pilots or the gunners from the Vegas shooting.
Yeah, so I talked to a couple other guys. They think they were the two shooters, right? From the two different angles. Yeah. So
there you go. I can't thank you enough. I'm really grateful. It was great to meet you.
I was gonna say,
thank you for taking the time, and thank you, Tommy. For
I was gonna say it's always a fun little game as as the show goes on over the years. I just more and more I wonder which episode is it that gets me killed. There's just so many now. I don't. It was after I think it was after the Clay and the one we did with Clay with when we're talking about like the silence. I just remember Clay texted me. He was like, "Nigga, you dead?" And I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, I think so. One time I got to hang out with Dale once a couple of years ago. I made a joke about my name being on servers in DC, and he just looked me dead in the eye and said affirmative. And I was like, oh, okay. So, that's a fun game for me. But we will, this will be up.
At least you live in the boonies, at least, so you got a little bit of a buffer zone.
Yeah, whatever.
It's not so easy to get to.
I don't give a shit. I'd give it up to the big man. This will be up tomorrow at 2 p.m. So I will send the link to you guys on Twitter tonight, and then we will absolutely do another one on the Dutch. I'd never even. I thought you were joking when you said that. I'd never.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave you with a little humor. I'm gonna leave you guys with a little humor, okay? But serious, okay? Everything signals, everything, okay? And I'm the crazy thing is I'm not a conspiracy guy. I got started all this in finance and technology, and then I went into special forces, went back to finance and technology, and then everything's about finance. So if you got a head on finance and capital and how that works, it's like, okay. So I want to give you a little humorous thing though, but was a signal, and it was and you got to look at the English language. We have something like 300 slurs in the English language for the Dutch specifically.
Oh, really?
We don't have, I don't know how many we have for African Americans. It's probably less than 30. There's like 10, no other people, right? Arabs and Pakistanis. We have over 300 specific slurs for the Dutch. Okay. But in the movie Goldmember, remember Mike Myers and Michael Caine?
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Caine plays Mike Myers' dad. And he meets Goldmember and he says, there's only two things I hate. People who are intolerant in others and the Dutch.
You got to love it, man.
It was a signal. And we just didn't hear it.
Inside joke. To those who know. I'm really looking forward to digging into this. This is a story that very few people know about, and Again, I'm fascinated by it, so I'm looking forward to it. I can't thank both of you enough. I really appreciate the conversation.
I'll jump on Twitter and we can we'll set up I'll do that today. We'll schedule another one, and I will message both y'all tomorrow when it's up. And yeah, everybody listening, when it's up tomorrow, please go follow them on Twitter. Please go subscribe to the YouTubes. John's Patreon is in there, as well as your, I think, Subscribe Star, whatever the it is, if you want to go support John and his investigations. And gentlemen, thank you so much for both your time. It was awesome.
Appreciate it, guys. You guys have a great one.
Thank you so much.